Dr. Martin Tate banged his fist on the congregated tin door. He finished the last of his water an hour ago, when he first spotted the structure. Spurred by the possibility of a settlement, he staggered desperately across 4 miles. Now, the hollow clang of the metal door filled him with dread. Shielding his eyes from the midday sun, he noticed a rusty watchtower overhead. He glimpsed a guard in the tower and sighed with relief. Then he saw the rifle trained on him. "Hands up and back away. Do you have any weapons?" "I'm just a traveller," Tate replied. He battled the dryness in his mouth. "I need shelter." The rifle relaxed. "Wait there." Tate waited, taking in the full view of the walled exterior for the first time. Tin sheets, a jeep door, armoured plates welded together. A wall of junk. Moments later he heard chains rattle as the main gate was forced open. A middle-aged man in a faded white shirt emerged, flanked by the guard. "You're all right. Come on in," he offered, waving Tate towards the entrance. Tate hobbled forward. "Dangerous business travelling out here alone. You walked?" "My hoverbike broke down some miles back." It was a lie, but Tate knew it would draw fewer questions than the truth. He examined his new compatriot, a stout man in his 40s with a receding hairline, dabbing sweat with a crumpled bandana. "The name's Davis, though most people here call me Mayor Davis. These fine folks put me in charge 3 years ago." A handshake extended. "I'm Doctor. I go by Tate," he said, accepting Davis's hand. "No sense in being modest, Doc. You could do us some good." Davis paused as he eyed the man before him. "So, where exactly were you coming from?" Tate sheepishly glanced back at the desolate landscape over his shoulder and shrugged. "That's fine," Davis replied. "Come on, I'll give you the grand tour." The 2 men entered the open gate, Davis gesturing towards the colossal wreckage of a Navy Superhawk at the town centre. "Welcome to Wingspan," he exclaimed. Tate's eyes traced the collapsed wings that ran the diameter of the settlement. He'd read about aircraft like this, but it was an entirely different thing to behold one in person. Wingtip to wingtip, they measured 2 football fields. Davis launched into a brief town history. The plane was shot down during the war, and the survivors built outward from its fuselage. An underground reservoir pierced by the crash kept the town alive, while wreckage scraps formed the walls. Tate knew the War of 21-25 left many Americans resentful of the government, both for the failed diplomatic efforts leading up to the conflict and for not protecting them from the bombs. Assuming that a town like this would have no shortage of anti-government sentiment, Tate thought he'd better keep his former employer a secret. Davis led Tate through the town centre. "That's Sal's butcher's shop. And next door is Anesta's produce stand. She's 1/5 Cheyenne. Her people lived in this land eons ago, before it all went to shit." Davis caught Tate eyeing the vegetable baskets. "There's only sweet potatoes and okra. It's all this lousy soil can support. Trade caravans come once a month. We'll be stocked up again come Thursday." From the butcher stand came a shout. "Hey, new guy! Come by if you're looking for quality meat. I've got a few ribeyes and some ground beef," Sal bellowed. Tate returned a wave, noting the bald butcher's pink-stained apron. "Is there somewhere I can stay?" Tate asked. "There's Dina's Diner up on the 2nd tier." Davis pointed to a sizable mobile home that was somehow hoisted and built into the town's 2nd level. Twin Airstream trailers sat above the diner, attached by ladders. "Dina can fix you something to eat and give you a place to sleep. I'll cover the credits for your room and board." Davis glanced up at the blazing sun, dabbing his head again. "Speaking of which, we have a bit of code in this town. It's firm. He who does not work shall not eat," Davis boomed. "John Smith at Jamestown. I fashion myself a bit of a historian," he said with a grin. "Everyone has to do their part. That's Wingspan policy." Tate nodded. "Seems fair." "You said you're a doc, so maybe you could—" "Not that kind of doctor," Tate clarified. "I'm a botanist. I work with plants." Davis tucked his sweaty bandana into his shirt pocket. "I see. I imagine your doctor training comes with a bunch of general know-how." Davis clapped Tate on the back. "Every person here has a role. We'll figure out yours." Tate took the lift up to the second tier. Roughly 8 by 8, the lift was a simple steel platform operated by an electric pulley system, which Tate guessed he'd destroy if he jumped up and down. Working in a secure lab for so long, he forgot how people on the outside might need to adapt. Eyeing the town as he ascended, he realized Wingspan was a testament to American resolve. Even with the country blown apart by nukes, Americans would rather build an elevator out of junk than take the stairs. Tate wandered up to the diner mobile home. He opened the front door, comforted by the nostalgic jingle of a bell above. 6 empty stools sat in front of a modest lunch counter. To his left, 2 booths with red vinyl seats. "Be out in a sec," declared a voice behind the kitchen door. A stocky, middle-aged woman popped through the swinging aluminium doors, drying her hands with a dish towel. "There's a new fella. I'm Dina. Mayor Davis radioed ahead and told me you'd be coming. You caught me in the middle of washing the lunchtime dishes. Otherwise, I would have been out here to greet you proper." "It's perfectly all right. I'm Tate." Smiling, Dina waited expectantly as Tate looked around. "Seems pretty slow today." "It should be. This time of day, you're the only one not working. Grab a seat. I'll fix you something." Tate shuffled to a stool and plopped down. 2 days. He'd been walking for 2 days. This was the first chance he'd had to sit on actual furniture. He couldn't hide his satisfaction. For the first time since he left the lab, he loosened his grip on the canvas bag, slung over his shoulder, and let it fall to the floor. Inside was his career achievement, the device that made him a wanted man after fleeing Red River Biotech. To him, fleeing was not a choice, but an obligation to humanity. "So, tell me a story, stranger. Where are you coming from? What's it like out there?" Dina inquired, giddy. Tate pondered, wanting to talk, but decided it best to remain vague. At least until he knew these people better. "I'm from down near Lubbock. Like everywhere else, not much to see. Besides a top-secret government lab," he thought. "Lubbock? That's quite a ways. It's a miracle you made it here alone." Distracted, Tate studied the cardboard menu with food and beverage options scribbled in marker. "This late in the month, that's just for show," Dina explained. "The only item available is the chicken pot pie because it's frozen." "One pot pie, then," Tate smirked. Tate wiped his mouth, picking at the bits of flaky crust lining the pie tin's edge. Dina dropped a vitamin in her mouth, chasing it with a swig of water. "Iron pill. It helps to take 'em until we get fresh produce." Tate gestured towards her water glass. "Your mayor said the town sits above an aquifer." "Yep. Great big reservoir. It's the only thing that makes this place habitable. Aside from here, the nearest water source is... I don't know." Dina took the empty tin pan. "You're probably curious about the particulars round here. There are 53 of us now," Dina said. "Delroy Cook moved to New Tulsa to help with trade. That place survived because no nukes hit it. The Russians and Chinese ran out of long-range missiles. Folks there rebuilt faster than most." Tate sat silently. He'd never heard stories firsthand from any surface dwellers before. He was tucked away in a state-of-the-art research compound while these people toiled away in a bombed-out hellscape. "Where does the electricity?" "Short version? We traded water for solar panels. Some smart folks even stabilized the old Superhawk core. After that, we finally got lights, freezers, the whole deal." She nudged the freezer. "Not luxury, but it keeps us going." Tate raised his eyebrows. "Impressive. Don't be fooled. If the sun stops shining, we're screwed." She collected the empty pie pan. "Over by the solar array is also where our skimpy crops grow. Soil's rotten, though. And I'll tell you what, living on just okra and sweet potatoes is not a fate I wish on any man." Hearing this, Tate perked up. "I might be able to help with that. In Lubbock, we improved crop growth with some new techniques. The results were very exciting. Do you think I could see the crop field?" "Knock yourself out. Mayor Davis would do cartwheels if we could grow something else." She held up a finger. "But before you go..." Dina disappeared through the kitchen doors and returned a moment later holding a wooden crate. "If you're going to work near the solar array, you should take one of these." She opened the box and held a small cast-iron spear in her hand. "It's a dehydration grenade. On the north side of the wall, wild dogs have been known to attack people. Nasty critters. It's also useful against the occasional bandit. You just pull the pin and throw. It lets off a big chemical cloud that sucks the moisture from organisms. It's not entirely lethal. As long as anyone exposed gets a drink of water within an hour, they'll be fine. Tate carefully placed it in his canvas bag. This is great, so I can get access to the solar... He stepped off the stool mid-sentence, and was instantly reminded of the strain his feet and legs endured from his trek. He stumbled, but quickly caught the counter. Dina reached to steady him. Take it easy. Why don't you rest and have a look at the field tomorrow? Those measly veggies aren't going anywhere. She pointed to a metal ladder on the far wall. Go ahead and unwind on one of the airstreams. They're fully furnished. Mayor Davis has you covered for a few nights. Tate nodded and started towards the ladder. As he was about to climb up, he turned back. Hey, Dina, when was the last time you had a strawberry? Dina let out a laugh. Don't tease a girl. Tate slept in later than he expected, stirred by a growing chorus of voices. His watch read 07:15. He changed into his only extra clothes, faded jeans and a flannel button-up, and hurried down to ground level. He strolled through the bustling town centre, canvas bag over his shoulder. A maintenance worker and the tower guard chatted over a cup of coffee. Sal the butcher removed some cuts of meat from the shop freezer. Sal looked up, his face brightening. Hey, pal, good to see you again. Spotting Tate's bag, his tone shifted. Say, are you sticking around? Probably. I believe I have my work assignment. I'm going to check on the crop soil around the solar array, see if anything can be done. Oh, good. I'm sure that'll be good. If you got some time, I'd love to bend your ear. I'm wondering if you've heard anything from farther out west. I'll trade you a story for a steak. What do you say? Sure, Tate nodded, heading for the main gate, the only exit. As he moved north along the perimeter, he glanced up at the 20-foot wall of scrap. Behind it, a whole community endured. People with names, jobs, and purpose. And this barricade of rubbish was all that stood between them and the endless nothing. Tate looked out at the horizon, and that's all he saw. So much nothing. Tate rounded the north wall and neared the solar array. Dust coated the panels. Who was maintaining them? He crouched, scanning the area. Dried weeds clung to the nearest ground mount, and farther off, trimmed sweet potato vines lay discarded. Tate walked to the center of the array and stopped at a patch of cracked, lifeless soil. He punched the ground and rubbed the dust between his fingers. Too much silt, and the perfect test site. He set down his device, sleek, black, brick-shaped. After a few taps on the touchscreen, it activated. 4 aluminium legs unfolded, lifting the device up. Tate held his breath. A glowing beam scanned a 9-inch grid, sweeping slowly across the dusty soil. The device hummed, beeped, then released a fine mist, moisture-rich with nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic matter. The soil darkened. Then, a single seed dropped into the center. The legs retracted, and the device tipped over, blinking red 3 times. Test complete. Tate's colleagues called it fertilizer on steroids. Gazing at the altered patch of soil, Tate held the device in his hands and smiled wider than he had in a long time. Then he heard the gunshot. It was around 10 a.m. when the tower guard spotted 2 approaching hoverbikes. He alerted Mayor Davis, and together they formed the usual receiving posse. Davis, one guard over his shoulder, and another to operate the gate's chains. Unusual to have unannounced visitors twice in as many days, Davis thought, but he dismissed it and passed through the open gate. As the strangers came into view, Davis felt a burning in the pit of his stomach. These were not wayward travellers in need of help. These were government men. They wore the same monotonous black suit and black tie, now tinted dusty brown from their high-speed ride. Disembarking from their hoverbikes, they shook off the dirt and removed their helmets. Davis could now see them clearly. One was white, the other black, with a shaved head. "Are you in charge here?" the white one asked. I'm Cameron Davis. I'm the mayor of this town. What's your business here? I'm Special Agent Allen. This is Special Agent Trotter, he said, nodding to his counterpart. Shiny badges flashed. We're from the new Bureau of Investigation, Midland Division. We're looking for someone. Mayor Davis stared back, reactionless. We need to search your town, Special Agent Trotter added. Lips tight, Davis turned and walked back for the open gate. The two agents looked at each other, then followed him in. As the three men moved towards the center of town, the hum of work slowed to a stop. Interlopers were here, and with them came trouble. Mayor Davis's aim was to avoid a confrontation. It was his responsibility to make sure things went smoothly and send these agents on their way. He stopped along the main path and gestured to the surroundings. This is our town. Welcome. Davis took the crumpled bandana from his shirt pocket and dabbed his forehead. The morning sun had just emerged above the exterior wall. Now, what was it you said you were looking for? We're looking for a suspect carrying stolen government property, Agent Allen explained. What is it that they're carrying? It's confidential, Agent Trotter declared. Hell, everyone here's carrying something. Myself, I'm carrying a well-deserved contempt towards government thugs. Damn, Davis thought. That was stupid. I got too cute, but they had that one coming. Agent Trotter smirked slowly. We're looking for a fugitive named Dr. Martin Tate, Agent Allen offered. There's a good chance he may have stopped here. Have you seen any newcomers recently? Anyone suspicious? Mayor Davis continued walking towards the market. The agents followed. Aside from you two, we haven't seen any new faces here for days, Mayor Davis said, intentionally loudly. The two agents shared a glance. The three men were now close enough for Sal to hear. In her adjoining produce stand, Anesta sorted okra. Agent Trotter looked to Mayor Davis, then gestured to the food stands. By all means, Mayor Davis replied. Agent Trotter approached Sal's butcher shop. Excuse me, sir, Agent Trotter started. Seen any new faces around recently? Any questionable characters come through here? We're looking for a fugitive. He brandished a pocket notebook, ready to take down details. Sal stayed tight-lipped. I wish. New faces would mean new customers, he said, averting his eyes and focusing on his burger patties. He turned his back to the agents and arranged the burgers in his fridge. In her produce stand to the right, Anesta erased the prices on her chalkboard for sweet potatoes and okra, then wrote in new prices, $5 higher than before. She crossed her arms and glared at the agents. Slightly amused, Agent Trotter shook his head. I wish we could be more helpful, said Mayor Davis. We wish the same. We're going to have to canvass this settlement and speak with everyone, Agent Allen declared. Mayor Davis opened his mouth to respond, but a shout from Sal's butcher stand cut him off. I said I was never going back! Sal walked around with a sawed-off shotgun in his hands and panic in his eyes. He pumped the forestock and took aim. In one fluid motion, Agent Trotter drew his service pistol from his hip holster, raised the weapon to eye level, and fired. The bullet entered the right side of Sal's neck. A splatter of red gore splashed against the butcher stand's polyester canopy. Sal spun from the force of the shot, catching the hole in his neck. He tried to steady himself with his left arm, but quickly collapsed. Mayor Davis staggered backwards, stunned, his bandana going to his open mouth. Agent Trotter's eyes darted left and right for other threats, spotting his partner doing the same, with his own gun drawn. We're clear, Agent Trotter proclaimed. Ernesta was ducked behind her produce counter. She peeked her head out when the guns were finally stowed. Grabbing an apron, she hopped the partition that separated the two food stalls. Oh my god, Sal! Oh my god! She knelt down and cradled Sal's head, pressing the apron against the carnage that was his neck. Ernesta looked down at her friend. Sal's eyes were glassy, and he'd already stopped breathing. Mayor Davis threw his bandana to the ground. Lousy bastards! Agent Allen adjusted his suit jacket and regained his composure. He drew my partner. You all saw it? The shooting was justified, he said coldly. Agent Trotter marched towards the butcher stand, then hopped over the counter. He looked down at her nester. Bloodstains flecked her denim shirt. Her face was tilted downward, with her forehead against Sal's. Tears ran from her cheeks onto his. Agent Trotter reached for Sal's shoulder. "I need to ID him, ma'am." At that, she stumbled backwards onto her rear. Her teary eyes hissed at him. "You—" her nester muttered. Anguish and anger competed for control over her next words, but pain won out. She whimpered, burying her face in her hands, her back pressed against the butcher shop fridge. Agent Trotter knelt by Sal's torso. He pressed a few buttons on the screen of his wristwatch. With 2 fingers, he pried Sal's eyelids open wide, and positioned his watch over each eye for a retinal scan. "We've got a hit," Agent Trotter reported to his partner. "Salvatore Russo. He escaped from Norfolk Correctional 2 years ago. He was serving 5 years for tax evasion." "Tax evasion?" Mayor Davis exploded. "There's a disgusting irony. Taxes for what? This damn government has done nothing for us besides letting us live out our days in this irradiated scrubland. And you chase a man down for taxes? No decency. None." "We can always have the Treasury accountants audit this town and everyone in it," Agent Trotter mused. "That is, if you're gonna give us a hard time." Agent Allen placed an outstretched arm in front of his partner, chiding him for the provocation. "We pay our pound of flesh," Mayor Davis grumbled. "Look," Agent Allen began, "what happened here is unfortunate. It truly is. What we—" "Murderer!" someone shouted from the mezzanine. Rising murmurs could be heard from the onlookers. Agent Trotter's hand lingered towards his gun. Once again, Agent Allen made a motion to pacify his colleague. "We still need to find our fugitive," Agent Allen stated to the mayor. "And this instance proves something that we can't ignore, that this town does, in fact, harbor criminals." Mayor Davis scoffed. The distant murmurs grew louder. Some townsfolk stepped closer. Agent Trotter raised his voice. "You'd be wise to keep your distance and stay calm, or before sundown there will be an army of agents just like us descending on your little tin can town." From a secluded portion of the upper scaffolding, Tate observed the exchange. Dina had ushered him in through a secret emergency door in the north wall after the gunshot rang out. The two of them spied the events from their hidden perch. Tate knew that if he hadn't come here, Sal would still be alive. His intent was to save lives, not end them. Dina placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll help you hide." Back in the center of town, out of preservation for his townspeople, Mayor Davis acquiesced. "Go on and continue your precious investigation, but keep your hands off my people." At this, Agent Allen looked at ease. "Thanks," he replied. "We should start with—" "But there's something you should understand first," Mayor Davis interjected. His voice was calm, but unyielding. "Nobody here eats or drinks without pulling their weight. That means you too." The agents exchanged a look. "I'm a career investigator," Agent Allen said. Mayor Davis mumbled something under his breath and turned to Agent Trotter. "I was an electronics technician in the army," Agent Trotter admitted. "But without proper tools, I can only do so much." "We'll keep it simple," Davis instructed. "The panels by the north wall need cleaning. Rags and water will be waiting. Do the work, then you can start your questions." "Not exactly bureau procedure," Agent Trotter muttered. "Welcome to Wingspan," Davis replied. A few clean, tattered rags draped over Agent Trotter's shoulder. Agent Allen hauled a bucket of soapy water, carelessly letting the contents splash out with each step. He observed the exterior of the town's wall, sneering. "They built a whole wall out of scrap. Hell, the entire town is trash. Makes you appreciate the dorm at HQ." "Do you think any of these people will talk?" Agent Trotter asked. "They might be helping him hide right now, if he's even here." Agent Allen pointed to the landscape. "Look around. There's practically nothing for miles. There's no way he made it past this settlement without stopping. Not on foot." The two men paused once the solar array came into view. "Great. Now we can do our damn chores." When they reached the nearest module, Agent Allen dropped the bucket with a thud. More water sloshed out. Agent Trotter studied a grimy panel surface. "These have seen better days." "Not our problem," replied Agent Allen, fishing a rag from the bucket. At each station, Agent Trotter took a moment to examine the components. The tempered glass, the solar cells, the junction box. By the time they reached the 8th module, his bewilderment was obvious. "What is it?" Agent Allen asked, annoyed. "Something isn't right. A bunch of these have frayed wires. The two over there have broken glass. I bet that a lot of these don't even work." "So what are you saying?" "This can't be their only power source." "So a handful of these panels couldn't power the trash town?" "We both saw a few freezers. There's likely more. I also spotted this elevator-type thing." Trotter's eyes traced the electric cables running from the solar array, along the ground and up the town wall. "I'd say the primary power source is in there." He pointed to the broken tail of the Superhawk, where the cables entered. "Well, will you look at that? Maybe these trash hoarders are a little more advanced than we..." Agent Allen froze, his eyes catching something. 20 paces away, a small seedling rose from the barren soil, its leaves a vivid green against the dust. "He's here," Allen murmured. He neared the plant and crouched down. Too vibrant to be theirs, and look, the soil's darker, patterned, just like the lab said. He pulled out his phone. "It's Allen. No visual on Tate yet, but the device was likely used. Looks like a tomato plant. I'll send images," he concluded, as he hung up the phone. He pointed his phone at the tiny seedling, capturing and sending some images. "Okay," he said, returning his phone to his pocket. "Ball's in their court." Agent Trotter's eyes returned to the tail of the transport plane. "Back in the day, some of those Navy Superhawks would land at our base for cargo resupply. They had a fusion core that would allow them to fly extra long distances. It's pretty interesting that these cables run up there," he said with a raised eyebrow. "Want to check it out?" "I do." The interior of the Superhawk was quiet, as usual. A beam of light pierced the plane's midsection window, landing on the makeshift control terminal. Atop a pair of milk crates, the primitive terminal consisted of a tin sheet with one lever, 2 gauges and a few buttons. The nearby desk chair sat empty, normally manned by Benny, who was on lunch break. Benny climbed the ladder from his living quarters below and took a quick look at the 2 gauges on the instrument panel. Satisfied with the readings, he settled into his chair and returned to his comic book. From the rear of the fuselage came a shout. "Anyone in here?" Agent Trotter yelled. Startled, Benny dropped his comic book and looked up. "Yes, of course. Is that you, Felix?" Benny replied, as he observed not one but 2 figures enter from the rear cargo door. He watched as 2 strange men descended the makeshift slanted stairwell into the plane. When the 2 agents reached Benny, he noticed their suits, prompting him to stretch his tall, lanky frame and stand up straight. "How can I help you, fellas?" "We followed the wiring from the solar array and saw that it led through here," Agent Trotter explained. "We thought we might take a look around." "Are you gentlemen new engineers in town?" "We're from the new Bureau," Agent Allen began, but he was quickly cut off by his partner. "We're from the Energy Safety Commission," Agent Trotter interjected, quickly presenting and retracting his badge. "We're here to make sure that everything is functioning properly." He pointed to the control terminal and the surrounding electrical wiring. "We need you to explain how all this works exactly." Agent Trotter noticed Benny's mouth slightly agape, and he was pleased that the man was sufficiently confused by this unexpected brush with authority. "Why, yes, certainly, I can help. My name's Benny." He gestured to the control terminal. "And this workstation is my responsibility." "The solar panels outside, do they power the whole town?" Agent Trotter asked. "Oh, no," Benny replied. "They're mainly for backup energy for this instrument panel, in case the core is acting up." "And the core?" Agent Allen prompted. "That's down in the belly of the plane. When that caravan with a few engineers came by years ago, they were able to fix the fusion core so we could use it. From then on, we've had lights and radios and freezers. It made life a heck of a lot easier. We called that the Miracle Caravan, and all it took was a little water for trade." "Ain't that something?" Agent Trotter commented. You've got your own nuclear fusion plant in this little patch of dirt. And what do you do here? Agent Talon asked, nodding to the terminal. You see, the situation isn't perfect, Benny noted. When the engineers took a look at the core, they said the crash damaged the walls of the fusion chamber, so we can only create a fraction of the power that it used to make, at least safely anyway. Benny leaned over the instrument panel and pointed to the two gauges and the lever. My job is to make sure the power and heat levels don't get too high. When they do, I use that lever to power cycle the whole system, he said matter-of-factly. Seems like you have quite the responsibility, Agent Trotter remarked. You could say that, Benny replied. When May Davis picked me for this, he said, the regular tasks are for the many, while the important job goes to Benny, he recited, smiling at the memory. That's why I'm here all the time, or 5 days a week. Felix covers on the weekends. Agent Allen's phone rang. He climbed one level of the stairwell to answer. Understood. Yes, we can do that. Stay here a moment while I confer with my partner, Agent Trotter instructed Benny. You're doing great work here, he reassured him, then climbed the single flight to join Agent Allen. Respecting the privacy of their conversation, Benny picked up the comic book that had fallen to the floor and started to page through it. So what's the update? Agent Trotter whispered to his counterpart. Agent Allen matched his volume. Boss confirmed. Tomato plant. With the device deployed, mission integrity is compromised. We now have a green light. A green light to... It's no longer a recovery operation. We killed Tate and destroyed the device, Agent Allen stated. You good with that? Agent Trotter paused for a moment in thought. He gazed at Benny and his comic book, then the control terminal. Yeah, and I think we found an easy way to do both. Agent Allen grinned back at him. He then started back down the stairs. Hey, Benny, I'd love to take a look at what you're reading. Benny looked up from his comic book with a buoyant expression, just as the two agents grabbed his arms. After Sal was killed, Dina whisked Tate away to the small cavern connected to the underground reservoir, where he remained. A service ladder led down there, and Tate rarely strayed away from it. There was only a small area of damp flowstone before the edge of the water crept up, so he sat on the narrow plot of wet rock. He used the downtime to form a plan. The town wasn't big. He knew the agents would find him eventually. He didn't want to risk further harm to these people. He concluded that he'd wait until nightfall and then slip away. He couldn't bear the thought of the device's potential going to waste, so he set out for another settlement, likely New Tulsa. The cool underground air reminded him of Red River Biotech. Located at the outskirts of Lubbock, the top secret lab was situated 30 feet below ground. He stared at the cavern wall, closed his eyes, and was back at Red River. Tate and Dr. Coing were the only ones in the glass-walled conference room. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Koenig, about 20 years Tate's senior, sat in a chair reviewing documents and making notes. Tate stood at the opposite end of the laminate conference table. I was a little confused by something that was said yesterday, Tate started. Confused by what? Koenig murmured, his eyes fixed on the documents. You mentioned something about a sunset clause. I wasn't sure what that meant. Koenig adjusted his glasses. The trials were a success, but production will be limited for 5 years. That's the sunset clause. Tate bristled. People are starving. We should release it now. Koenig's voice hardened. We lost the war. Resources serve the few who can pay. That's how the government recoups taxes. Tate clenched his fists. This could feed thousands. You built it with their money. They decide how it's used, Koenig said flatly. Tate hesitated for a moment. His next was a gamble. I forgot to mention that the aperture on the agriboost was acting up. The scanning beam wasn't as concentrated as it should be. I should be able to recalibrate it easily. Koenig stared back for what felt like an eternity to Tate. Fix it, Koenig ordered. The investors arrive tomorrow. Later that day, Tate falsified a defect in a QA report to buy some time alone with the agriboost. That night, he stole the device and snuck aboard a transport truck departing the lab. When the truck stopped at an e-charging station, he slipped away. Around 10 p.m, Tate filled his canteen to the brim, then started up the ladder. Dina was waiting for him. "I figured you'd be leaving," she said. She handed him a bundle. Some dried sweet potato slices, a pair of muffins, and a frozen pot pie. "I spotted the government men talking to Mayor Davis 30 minutes ago, but I haven't seen them since. Now's your best chance to take off. I can sneak you through the emergency hatch in the north wall again." Tate nodded in agreement. "Let's get going." They moved along Wingspan's inner perimeter, under the cover of the scaffolding. When they arrived at the emergency door, Dina turned the handwheel and opened the hatch. Stuffing the food bundle into his sack, Tate whispered, "Thanks for everything." "Before you go," Dina started. She looked down to see that she was wringing her hands. "I was hoping I could ask a favor." Accessing a memory long sealed, her eye swept across the wall and landed on Tate again. "I have a daughter. She goes by Allie Munro. She must be about 26 now." Dina fell silent. Her eyes welled up as she spoke. "She and I had a falling out a few years back. She took up with a trade caravan and left. They operate farther north, in eastern Kansas or maybe parts of Missouri. I don't know exactly." Tate listened intently to her plea. "I'm hoping that if you run into her, that you'll deliver a message from me." "Of course. Tell her that Mama still loves her, and I hope to see her again someday." Dina's hand went to her mouth. Tate nodded solemnly at the request. He put one foot through the door's opening before turning back. "Under one of the solar sets out here, there's a tomato plant. It's small, but it'll be bigger tomorrow. It should flower next week. Try and take care of it." Dina stepped forward and hugged him. "You take care of yourself," she replied. And at that, Tate disappeared. There was a stillness to Benny's room. It was even quieter than usual. No creaks from his weight shifting in his desk chair, no sounds of worn comic book pages turning over. Benny's body was stuffed in a trunk at the foot of his bed. The room was as lifeless as he was, until the steel call bell connected to the heat gauge gave off a single ring. Tate crept quietly along the outside wall, keeping to the shadows until the hoverbikes came into view. No agents in sight, no guard in the tower. He knelt by one bike, detached his power cell, and stashed it in his canvas bag before climbing onto the other. The engine's hum was louder than he liked. He opened the throttle, aiming for the cover of Crag Rock, a nearby mesa. The rush of air blew his hair back. The speedometer hit 80 before a sharp series of beeps cut through the night. "No," Tate muttered, watching the panel flash remote shutdown. The boosters died, the nose dipped, and he was airborne. He hit hard, pain exploding in his shoulder. The bike flipped into a boulder, his canvas bag landed nearby. Tate crawled toward it, then blacked out. Tate's eyes were still closed when he detected approaching footsteps. A kick to the ribs jolted him from his stupor. He let out an agonizing scream. "Do you have any idea how long we were looking for you?" Agent Ellen chided. He motioned to the wrecked hoverbike chassis. "And look what you did to my ride." Tate rolled onto his belly and made a feeble effort to crawl away. Agent Allen stepped on his ankle. "You're not going anywhere, Doc. Where's the device?" "There's a bag," Agent Trotter noted, pointing to the canvas pack. He walked over to retrieve it. Picking it up, he gave the bag a shake to assess the contents. "It's funny," Agent Allen mused. "If we found you sooner, then we'd have taken you into custody, you and the gadget. But you had to use the damn thing for these peasants. Lousy scientists always think they know better," he said, shaking his head. Agent Allen drew his gun from his holster. "Now we have new orders. We don't need you. Hell, we don't even need the device. But I'm guessing we'll get a bonus if we bring it back now." He aimed his gun at Tate and spoke to Agent Trotter. "Partner, let me know what we have." Agent Trotter rummaged through the bag. "Fuel cell for the other bike," he announced, dropping it to the ground. His hand dug deeper. "I think we have a winner." On his back with his hands up, Tate made a final plea. "Wait, you don't have to do this. Please." "Sorry, Doc," You knew the consequences. Tate looked away, his eyes drifting towards Agent Trotter, who pulled the agriboost from the bag. At that, a sharp click came from the depths of the bag. Agent Trotter looked down to find the agriboost's water reservoir port connected to the circular pin from a dehydration grenade. "What the?" he uttered. The grenade detonated, engulfing the three men in a storm of beige dust. All three were overcome by the same symptoms: coughing fits, irritated eyes, bone-dry mouths, and parched lips. Agent Trotter dropped the bag and the agriboost. He fell to his knees, furiously rubbing his eyes. Agent Allen blindly felt the ground for his gun, letting out hoarse coughs. Tate forced an eyelid open, ever so slightly. He crawled to his bag. Both eyes now shut and inflamed, he fumbled through, producing his canteen. Coughing, he slowed only when several paces away from the agents. He opened the canteen and drank, spitting up the first gulp. He took a small sip and sloshed the water around in his mouth. He splashed some on his face, alleviating the burning in his eyes. He took a full sip and, after concentrating, was able to breathe normally again. Agent Allen was still pouring for the gun, now nearly within reach. Tate hobbled over and snatched the pistol, tucking it into the back of his waistband. He grabbed the agriboost, gave it a quick wipe, and placed it back in his bag. Tate wasn't sure how long the effects would last, but he reasoned that he had enough time to gather a posse from town and figure out what to do with the agents. Tate shouldered his bag and took 2 steps towards Wingspan before the ground rumbled. He raised his arm to shield his face from a wave of searing heat, the town suddenly erupting outward. Fragmented pieces of the wall hurtled skyward. The Superhawk's wings, airborne one last time, soared before spinning and breaking apart. The deafening blast forced Tate backwards. Tate stared in shock. Wingspan had vaporized in a flash of white. As black smoke and a menacing orange glow enveloped the town, guilt threatened to consume him too. He looked back at the agents, both near collapse. They'd done this, but so had he. Spotting handcuffs on Agent Trotter, Tate shackled them together, leaving them to their thirst. One last look at the smoke, then he turned away, resolving to bury it all into a barren corner of his mind. He figured New Tulsa was the next closest town, about 150 miles northeast. He could try the agriboost there. If he kept a fast pace and took few breaks, he estimated a 5-day journey. On the bright side, he had a half-full canteen and a top-secret mobile fertilizer. Tate hoisted the bag over his good shoulder and let out a sigh. "I'd better start walking."